Welcome to the last section in life insurance. You've made it this far, and those of you that are doing the life-only exam, this will be your last section that you'll watch on the videos here. Then you'll go ahead and read through the law related to your state on the life insurance part of the exam. Take the practice exams and the final exams here within the course. Get your 90% on those, and you're ready to go take your exam and pass that exam. Remember, again, if you have any questions right at the top part of the website here, there's a contact us form. You just fill it out. It gets emailed directly through to me. I'll do the best to get back to you as soon as I can. And this last section is really pretty short. Not a whole lot of questions related to it usually, but there is a contribution limits handout that we have on the PDF portion of the site that you want to print out, just to take a look at that and familiarize with the contribution limits that there are related to these qualified plans. But we're on page 63 now in the book, and we start out with the heading of qualified plans. So, back in 1974, the feds passed this law called the Employees Retirement Income Securities Act, sometimes just referred to as ERISA, the acronym of the federal law. And this law set forth guidelines for qualified plans. Now, qualified plans, a couple things about qualified plans is they're tax qualified. But in order to meet this tax qualified guidelines, they have to conform to this federal law. So this federal law really lays out the guidelines. If an employer wants to establish a qualified plan, it has to meet all the guidelines under the federal ERISA law. Now, you might have a question on the exam, who enforces this federal law? And you might want to write this in the book. The answer would be the Federal Department of Labor. The Federal Department of Labor enforces the ERISA qualified plan guidelines. So we go on a little further. These numbers 1, 2, and 3, these are the guidelines under ERISA. Now, here's the real situation in real life. I'm an employer. I want to establish a retirement plan for my employees, so I'm going to establish a qualified plan. Why would I do this? Well, there's tax advantages to it for me as an employer. If I'm going to contribute money into the account on the behalf of my employees, I can use it as a tax write-off. However, I can only do this if it's a qualified plan. So I want to make sure that it follows these guidelines because I want the tax write-off as the employer. Now, obviously, as a qualified plan, though, there's also tax advantages to the employee. One of those being the money contributed to the qualified plan is contributed pre-tax. So you have a lot more money going in right off the bat. And also, the growth in the account is tax deferred. So you have a compounding of growth effect in the retirement account in the qualified plan until the money's withdrawn. So if it's a qualified plan, whenever money's withdrawn, it's 100% taxable. The distribution's 100% taxable unless the person elects to do a rollover, which we talked about in the last section. So we'll see rollovers here again. Also, we're going to have the age requirement. If you're under 59 and a half, you're going to have a 10% penalty on the amount you withdraw. With exceptions such as death and disability that we'll talk about there. So we need to find out the guidelines. If I'm an employer and I want to establish a qualified plan, what are the guidelines I have to follow? Under that federal law, ERISA, which is enforced by the Federal Department of Labor, here are the requirements. We have number 1, vesting. Vesting means ownership by definition. So ERISA states that my employees must have a certain percentage of vesting in the retirement account at a certain point in time. There has to be what they call a vesting schedule in the retirement account. Now, when we're talking about vesting, we're talking about ownership of employer contributions. Because when I'm going to contribute from my paycheck as well, in most situations. So I might contribute from my paycheck, my company might match my contribution. Well, we're talking about vesting. I'm 100% vested in my contributions, but we're talking about ownership of the employer contributions. Excuse me. So it might take a certain number of years until I have 100% ownership of those contributions by the employer on my behalf. If I want to leave the company, I can only take that percentage that I'm vested in those contributions. Okay, so there has to be a vesting schedule. And then we have the next paragraph. Remember, contributions were placed into the plan on a pre-tax basis by the employer and earned interest on a tax-deferred basis over the years. So upon withdrawal, they will be fully taxable as ordinary income in the year withdrawn. And if withdrawn prematurely, subject to early withdrawal penalties, 10%, as well if withdrawn prior to age 59 and a half. 2, eligibility under ERISA prescribes all full-time employees defined as those working 1,000 hours a year or more must be covered in the plan. And who have worked 1 year and are age 21 or more And then we have 3, non-discrimination. Put a star by this, probably a question on your exam. ERISA specifies all workers must be treated alike. That is, the employer must contribute the same percentage for lower paid workers that is contributed for higher paid workers. So they cannot discriminate in favor of people that make higher wages than others within the company. Okay, so we go ahead to the next page on page 64. So that's the definition of qualified plans as set forth under the ERISA federal law passed in 74. Those are some of the guidelines to follow. And then we get to the top of page 64, non-qualified plans, which by definition is any retirement plan that does not meet all the federal guidelines set forth under ERISA. Now, if it's not a qualified plan, it's non-qualified. And if it's non-qualified, then it loses favorable tax treatment for the employer and a lot of times the employee. Now, the most well-known type of non-qualified plan is called a deferred compensation plan. And sometimes these are funded, sometimes they're not funded, but basically it's an agreement between the employer and the employee that at retirement age, the employer will have a certain amount of money set aside for the employee. Now, if this is an unfunded deferred compensation plan, you could imagine how risky that would be. You know, what happens if the company doesn't have money to set aside for this plan? Or what happens if the company goes broke? Okay, so it's kind of a risky situation there. Now, goes over deferred comp plans in the third paragraph down on page 64. Most common of these is deferred compensation, where the employee agrees to defer receipt of current earnings until retirement. This type of plan may be funded or unfunded. If funded, the employer might utilize an annuity as the funding device. If unfunded, the plan amounts to an unsecured promise by the employer, which could be risky for the employee if the employer goes broke. In the next paragraph, even if funded, the employer receives no current tax deduction, but the employee is not currently taxed. So there's the loss of favorable tax treatment for the non-qualified plan. Next heading, federal tax considerations. As you can see, qualified plans have tax advantages to both the employer and the employee. What else we see? As I mentioned, the amount contributed by the employer's tax deductible is a business expense. The amount grows tax deferred for the employee. In the next paragraph it says, taxes may be deferred further if a withdrawal is taken and it is rolled over into another qualified plan such as an IRA. We said you can do a rollover once a year, has to be done within 60 days. If a distribution is taken, there's a 20% withholding, but you're going to want to do a trustee-to-trustee direct rollover. Just have the check made out to the trustee of the new retirement plan. Yeah, so no dollar amount on the amount to be rolled over. Then we get into the different types of qualified plans. Bottom of page 64, we start with the SEP IRA, which is a simplified employee pension. And basically it's an employer-sponsored IRA, similar to the function of a traditional IRA, but allows for employer contributions and has much higher contribution limits than just a traditional IRA, individual IRA would have. Bottom of the page, we have the self-employed plans, HR 10 or Keogh plans. For whatever reason, they like to ask about these on the exam in this section usually. And they ask, Keogh plans are for who? Self-employed and partners. So specifically for them. And so highlight that in the second sentence. So the limits, there's contribution limits like everything else. And we get the money out, the self-employed person gets money out, they have to pay tax, possibly 10% early withdrawal penalty. Top of page 65, profit sharing and 401k plans. So they really kind of tie them both together here, and in that second paragraph they go into the 401k plan. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down they talk about the profit sharing plan. Now a profit sharing plan can be established by a corporation, and it is what it is, just what it says. They will make contributions from profits of the corporation if there is a profit. So basically this retirement plan, the profit sharing, rewards employees for a job well done, I guess you could say. They say if the employees perform well at their job, the company will perform well and meet certain profit expectations. If they do, contributions will be made by the employer and on behalf of the employee into this profit sharing plan. So contributions are made from net income. So only if a certain projected profit amount is made generally, that's when contributions are made. So they kind of list that in there, but highlight that first sentence, just the basic definition of a profit sharing plan. We go to the simple plans. Now this is a retirement plan for small employers that they define there in the first sentence, having less than 100 employees. Now, there are some guidelines under the simple plans that are different than most qualified plans, usually more stringent, more strict on behalf of the employee. So we talked about vesting requirements earlier in the book. There has to be a vesting schedule, ownership of employer contributions. At a certain point in time, you have to be 100% vested in those. In a simple plan, all contributions made by the employer are 100% vested immediately. So put a star or highlight the last sentence. The third one paragraph from the bottom on 65, the last sentence. All contributions must be non-forfeitable and are vested immediately. Then we get to the 403B TSAs, which we already went over in that annuity section because it's an annuity. Tax sheltered annuity, tax qualified annuity, it's a qualified plan. So we said for nonprofits, public education institutions, can a student establish one of these? No. How about a professor at a private school? No. It's got to be public school or nonprofit organization. Contributions are made from salary reduction from gross income. Employee is not taxed on the money that they contribute. And when they start taking distributions, they will be 100% taxable, plus if taken under age 59.5, 10% penalty. So you see that last paragraph there, before tax dollars subtracted from the individual's gross income by way of salary reduction. And that will be it there with that section. And that's the end of life insurance. Now you're going to see on page 67, here are your key facts. You're going to want to read through these key facts and then take the 2 practice exams here. We've got 50 question exams, so we've got 100 questions of practice questions you've got there to take for life insurance. And then there's some final exam questions at the end and the final exams at the end of the book. You're also going to want to make sure you read the glossary, which in this blue book is going to be on page 293, but you'll just see a separate PDF there in the PDF section that has the insurance glossary in there. So you want to read the key facts. Also take them with you when you go down to take the exam and reread them twice before you go in to take the exam. Read the insurance glossary, make sure you're familiar with the terms. Take all the exams in the book and on the online exam until you can get a 90%, understanding why the correct answer is correct and the incorrect answer is incorrect, and you'll be good to pass the exam. Thank you for joining me here learning about life insurance. Those of you coming back and continuing on in health, I'll see you there for health insurance basics in the next section. Those of you taking the life only exam, good luck on that exam. I hope you all pass, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.